call to order the Economic Development Authority meeting, Tuesday, March 18th, 4 p.m. Montrose City Hall. Roll call.
Jessica Barnwell.
Dave Paradise.
Sam Solar.
All right. To the approval of the agenda. A second? I will second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes 3-0. Approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. On to the treasurer's report.
The current balance in the Economic Development Authority Fund is $288,551.33, and then the revolving loan fund is sitting the same at $257,754.78.
Any questions for Jeff? I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0. No old business, on to new business. 7A, the TIF modification request from J.P. Brooks, Preserve of Montrose.
I'll dive in first. All right. I prepared a letter in your packet based on the request that was received from J.P. Brooks to look at a second phase for the project and for consideration in allowing rental units within the development. As originally proposed, as a background I provided in the letter, our first phase was ultimately providing 24 years of reimbursement of new property tax associated with the construction of 36 units. The amount of that assistance totals, I think it was just over $2 million, $2,035,043 in tax increments over a 24-year term. And that's based on units being constructed in a timely manner, paying property taxes on time and in full, the city collecting those as tax increments from the county, and then reimbursing the developer. So if anything is broken in that chain of events, the developer doesn't receive reimbursement payments. So if they sell to non-income qualified folks, we can't capture tax increments on the property. If the property owner is delinquent in paying property taxes, we're not capturing that as tax increments, so we don't receive it from the county, we don't reimburse it from the developer. So essentially from a risk perspective, we're not risking any cash that we don't already receive from the county when we're providing that reimbursement. And we did that to promote the build out of a development that sat there for an extended period of time without having infrastructure completed or houses built. And so that's the deal that's in place today for the 36 units. In that development agreement, we referenced the construction of additional units, but we didn't get into great detail or provide the TIF note, essentially, which defines the reimbursement that would occur. And so now J.P. Brooks is looking to formalize that phase 2 agreement. And we've indicated that as a part of that, we would like some consideration for the construction of single level units because they think there's some demand for those. Sounds like they'd be of equivalent size and more expensive to build because they'd be single level and still maintain the square footage that you have in your other units. And if they want to have, it sounded like up to, was it 36 units for rental between the two phases?
Yeah, I mean, we're flexible on that. We don't know what the demand is going to be, so if the city has some direction, we didn't really want it to go above a 25% level for the whole project, just to have a good balance of the homeowners who are going to live there, not, you know, have a more home ownership in that project, but also be able to allow us so that we can continue moving the project along and not have it very long.
So you understand that there's different income restrictions applied depending on if it's owner occupied or rental. So when the original first phase was constructed, it was meant to be all owner occupied, which indicates that 95% of the units have to meet an income restriction. And that's for 2024, it was a family of 2 or fewer had to be at $124,200 in gross household income or less. order to qualify to purchase that unit for us to capture the tax increment off of that unit. And JP Brooks has to certify to the city who they're selling to and if they meet those income limits. For rental property, it's only 20% of the units that have to meet an income requirement. And so it's 20% have to be made available to folks at 50% of area median income by family size. And so 2 out of every 10 rental units would have to be made available for folks at the, 1 person family was 43,500 or below, 2 person was 49,700 or below, 3 person 55,900. You can capture the increments off of all rental units as long as 20% are made available for folks that meet that income requirement. It's considered a market rate subsidy. Most of the rental property we see developed in greater Minnesota is using TIF in order to make the project work in this day and age because of construction costs and interest rates and all those kinds of things. And so it's fairly commonly used on rental property. So with that, I provided the background that I can, and I'm happy to answer questions. But at the end of the day, what the developer's looking for is, are we ready to make a commitment on phase 2, and can phase 1 and phase 2 include some rental units? And if and ultimately, what I would tell you is we'd look for a recommendation from the EDA to the city council, and that recommendation would be, whether or not to proceed, and number 2, authorize the city attorney to work on drafting a revised agreement with the developer. We created a TIF district that has suitable budget, already defines a 3-phase project, and so you can essentially accommodate whatever you want with regard to a project here. Now it's up to you guys and the attorney to decide how you'd like to proceed. So happy to answer questions here.
I would just love a quick update from how the project is going now from you.
Yeah, so, thank you for that. We started off a little slow, well, not necessarily slow from a development standpoint, but we hit, I think it was really in the roads where we had some struggles with, the base of the roads from the existing, developer and just time. So, and then right when we got hit with that, it rained a ton, so we had to spend a lot of time letting it dry out before we put in roads, and so that really set us back probably a couple months. But when we hit with that and then not being able to get it into the fall, really, then we had to build it all winter, which is that, I mean, not to complain, but that's construction, so that's just part of it. And when you're in Minnesota, that you're going to deal with it, that's not too abnormal, actually. So we have our first building almost finished. I think it's a month and a half away probably from occupancy. We do have one of the units out for purchase agreement right now. I think it's one of the end units. The feedback has been good, but when you're in this price point, if it's not built, you're not getting much activity. Now we have the exact same model up in Zimmerman, and we haven't had that much success getting people to drive there to go see it. But once we finish this first building, we think we'll be off to close to what we thought before. It will be slow. We've been hitting, we've been getting hit, and this is everyone, this isn't just us, we've been getting hit with a lot of cost increases. The lots were a little bit more, inflation has come up even another probably 5% since we thought. So those are proposing challenges, but the TIF allows us to keep going and kind of absorb those, and then just know that someday we'll get paid back for those things. So one thing is also we've been getting a lot of feedback about would we rent out a unit or two. We're comfortable with the renting out of the units because these will be HOA maintained, same exactly like it was a homeowner. And so there's going to be restrictions on what can happen in there, and then also from a maintenance standpoint, the exterior is going to be maintained by the exact same company that was owner or not. So you're going to have a hard time. Well, I don't even know if you would know if one was for sale or one was an owner occupied by looking at the exterior, for sure. And then another thing is we've been getting a lot of people living in Montrose or wanting to live in Montrose about one level living, and we've had to turn them away. And these are all 2 stories. And so kind of this naturally came out when we were looking at this project and looking over to the west side that, hey, if we put twin homes kind of like that's on the southern section that's already platted, kind of to mirror that exact same thing, instead of having, yeah. So on the west side, so right now, these are all the same, two-story in the middle, and then these were gonna be the same thing on the west side, but as you can see down here, there's some orphan lots that were twin home lots that are already platted. This is prior to us coming on board. We took this same thought and said, hey, what happens if we did this to the whole section? Now, this will cost more. It costs more to build, and it will cost more because we'll have to kind of rearrange the infrastructure some. But we believe with that buyer, they will be able to afford a little bit more. And if we can keep the cost somewhat low with the TIF, we would still be excited to go forward with that. A lot of these people will be retirees on a fixed income. They'll probably want to buy it with cash, but they won't have an income, so they should qualify for like under the TIF requirements on there too. But it allows someone to have an affordable payment or no payment and be able to stay in Montrose because there just is not many one-level living options for that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest downfall for Delaware right now, is they don't have a lot of the one single level homes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of those people are looking right now to either stay in Delaware or stay close by, so it's a good opportunity for Montrose to take that on.
For sure.
I think it's a great idea.
And then another thing, it affordable too. Like that's very, very important with someone that doesn't have has a fixed income. So keeping these somewhat affordable, which is that's a relative term. Affordable from 5 years ago is different than affordable than it is today. These will still be at higher payments than almost anyone else in Montrose who bought 5 years ago or longer. So it's still it'll still be expensive compared to historical, but it will be affordable to what's on the market. It will allow you to keep the residents here that don't have another option. So, and then these will be about the same square footage as the if they have a sun porch, which is like a little appendage on the back of the home. And we think a lot of those will be constructed with those. It'll be almost the same square foot as the ones with the 2 stories. So very similar size as well. Yeah, so that helped for an update.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're kind of not having only one sold. It's kind of we're kind of, but at the same thing as you get the train going on these development projects, you have to keep them going. We kind of have to take it, and we just have to keep going. And that's why if we can rent out a few and still build the next building, and then sell a few, and then rent out a few, it'll help us to kind of get a pace so that we can continue this and be a successful project. And we can see this all the way through at some reasonable time.
So J.P. Brooks would own the rental unit?
Yeah, it would be a subsidiary of J.P. Brooks. You can't own it in the same company, but yes, it would be the same ownership.
I had indicated that common ownership would probably be required though, because it's 20% of the units under common ownership, to meet the income requirement. And so if we had multiple owners, that would be more difficult to track. It would be harder to determine if we're achieving that goal.
Yeah, so this would not be sold to an investor that then would be rented out. It'd be to us. Now, if someone buys a unit down the road and they qualify, then obviously they could rent it out someday.
Sure.
No problem.
With owner-occupied housing, only the first occupant has to qualify under the income guideline. With rental units, they have to continually meet that requirement of 20% of units being made available. So there would be constant monitoring of rental. There would be one-time monitoring for an owner-occupied unit sold to an income qualified person. Once it meets, and then 2 weeks later, it doesn't happen, but 2 weeks later it could be sold and ultimately rented out or occupied by somebody that's wealthier. But the first occupant has to meet the requirement.
We also monitor that all in house, and we know how to do that, so we're very comfortable with that too.
All right, and I agree with David. I think one level living is a need for it, especially in this area. I really have no concerns with this going forward.
Well, if you decide to proceed, make a recommendation to council. I have 56 units in this letter, it's 54. I use 56 in my analysis. understand that property taxes on rental property are a fair amount higher than on owner occupied, and so that will, the TIF revenue will fluctuate based on however many ultimately are rental versus owner occupied. And so we'll try to come to a reasonable amount that reflects, the development and the number of rental units that, he's suggesting, and we'll put together a final projection that would go to the council with your recommendation, whatever that is, so.
Would you ever get, like an estimated cost of the whole project? I was coming in with beginning of,
The whole project,
like.
I think we did
the-
about days, or no, you
Oh.
shared.
The TIF, from what I understand from the TIF, we just wanted to cover your cost, like if, we wouldn't reimburse more than what it.
Yeah,
So-
yep, so it
Yeah.
actually has to be under certain costs, it can't even be the whole cost, obviously.
Right,
It's really horizontal costs, I don't know if you wanna give a explanation of that, but it's like roads and the foundation.
Yeah, well, in a housing district, they can fund housing project costs, but understand that their cost of development is, tens of millions of dollars, and the TIP subsidies, if all 3 phases were subsidized and subsidized to the maximum amount. We had a budget in our TIP plan of $8 million.
Yeah.
The first phase is, we have 3 phases, and the first phase is $2 million, and that was a smaller phase. But at the end of the day, what we're hopeful of is that by phase 3, it doesn't need TIP anymore.
That's changed. No,
But we understand what you're facing, but I like to throw it out.
that's good.
At the end of the day, he's picked up a development that languished for an awfully long time. And so, I think the community appreciated that. So.
Yeah, no, we're excited, we love filling out in these areas and love filling that need totally. So we're not like a big corporate company, I own the company myself, so, we love to be able to do it, we believe in our product.
Yeah, I got a lot of people are excited to see it go up.
Yeah.
Once something finally there, so.
Yeah.
We're excited to have you guys there.
Yeah, we are.
Selfishly, I wanna continue the relationship past this one.
Yeah, that'd be great,
Once 2028 hits, connected it, but get more capacity for you.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But, I mean, that's looking, finding the right developers, that really care about the town, and that's huge, I think, for all of us here. So, you're building in all the right areas, Big Lakes and all that stuff, so you understand, maybe we're one of the smaller ones, but you understand kind of, what we're looking for and what this community is, so.
And then just clarify, the 28 units are still under that 95% subsidy, the owner office.
It would be, ultimately, you wanna carve out some of the 36 units to be rental, was my understanding of phase 1. And so, he wants to have a portion of phase 1 rental and a portion of phase 2. And so, we'll have to work on trying to define that as best we can in the development agreement that gets drafted. At this point, I thought you said something, 32 is what number that you threw out as rental.
Yeah.
Between the 2 phases, so that would be 36 and 54. Out of that, we'd have 32 units that would be rental, so a third or less.
So when we reworked this plan, I think this site was 174 units total, and then when we take the twin homes, which developers hardly ever do, is we actually made it a little less dense because the footprints are bigger on those twin homes. So we believe that if we don't have another product type, we think that this project could be sitting for a very long time, and I'll have all the exact same homes, where this would add another, just a little bit more of a diverse thing to it. But where was I gonna go with your question on the for sale? Oh, we really don't want to have more rentals than 25%. Now, we get that number from other HOA owned communities where that seems where HOAs like to balance it at. I don't even know if we'll go to that amount, but we think a healthy mix is that's kind of a norm in the industry, so we'd like to stay there. For the Yeah, that's what it says even on the sheet, total proposed lots would be eight lots left. But we think this will add a little bit more dynamic, feel to the community.
Any other questions on the request?
And for council, this will also include a simultaneous, like, replatting.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Not sure if
Is it a
that,
plat amendment or?
yeah, I'll have to check with our planner, I am not familiar with that
Okay.
process as much, so I'm not sure if that has to go to planning and zoning or if that's just a council approval, so
Okay.
I'll get in touch with you about that.
Would work on the development agreement, start simultaneously with the work on the replat, or would you wait till the replat is approved?
I mean, what do you usually see in a case like this? I have no idea.
A lot of times they're working on them simultaneously,
That's
as
kinda what I
long
was
as the
thinking.
developer understands they both have to be approved at
Before
the
they
same
can,
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. I'll
that
do
saves time to, ultimately they both come together at the same point.
Hopefully it'll be a fairly easy, replatting.
Really, then both come at the same time, one month and the other.
Yeah, and then we can just hold whichever one and then do it. Hold everything or something.
Any other questions?
Those are good questions.
I was like, I need to learn about this.
Yeah, no, it's good, it's good.
Or get more into them. So, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And the
Further
renters,
discussion?
people are looking for rent.
Yeah, some of the renters could turn into owners too,
Yeah.
so much is great.
Great.
Need a motion for it?
To approve,
Just to recommend to the council that they authorize the attorney to work on a revised development agreement.
I will make that motion right there.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
It's all right if someone else.
I know, that's right. We do need to do that, but once we get a home up, I think, once we get a building up, fully furnished and modeled, we'll have hours out there.
Tell them I would already at 6 o'clock.
Yeah. I'll tell them that, that'll be good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Yep.
Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, good
We'll
to
be
see
in
you guys.
touch.
Thank you.
When you have one of those open, make sure you let me know, and I can also share it in the newsletter so that we can make sure we draw attention to it and get some people out there and stuff too.
Alright, moving on to volunteer fair discussion.
Yeah, so the volunteer fair is April 30th, from 6:30 to 8, and just wondering if EA wants to be there as a table.
I will already be there.
Well, I'll be there till like for planning and zoning, so, I wouldn't be able to take on the EA.
I don't feel they would need
I
to
think, I don't feel
put
that
it
we
in,
need
to be honest.
Would it be, just like getting people into the group? Is that kind of what we're doing?
That's, yeah,
Volunteer.
Yeah,
but I just don't think there's a need for it right now. I think we have some interest with 12-12.
Yeah.
So I think
I agree.
any more in this group, it just becomes too much.
Yeah, we have a lot of planning and zoning.
I feel like, parking rec could use a couple of hands and stuff like that. So it's like, I don't wanna take away from
Yep, I
that
totally
piece
agree.
at all, so.
Do we wanna be there? Then
The chamber is gonna be there?
Chamber.
I'll represent the,
Okay.
one of the people.
Yeah.
I don't think it's only, but
I'll be in Calgary. In Canada.
Okay,
Joking.
so,
Um,
no EDA.
I just don't see it,
I don't see a need yet.
a need for EDA.
Just wanted to wrap that up, just because we're trying to figure out who's gonna be there.
If we were an influx of just the three of us here, yeah, probably, but.
And if you want us to, like, if we changed the mind and added something, I could just add something to the chamber, or the chamber board, yeah. Okay, perfect. Right, and then what time is it, 6:30?
6:30 to 8 on the 30th.
Okay, cool.
Any updates?
Are there any with you, do you have any?
Yes, actually, so if you haven't noticed, or if you haven't seen, we are finally, looking for our assistant, so, the now hiring has gone out, we'll actually start reviewing. We have 7 resumes at the moment, and we're gonna start reviewing those, at the end of this week and early next week, after our board meeting. We've done some strategic planning initiatives with the county EDA, so there will not be so much friction between the EDA and the EDP. It is more of a partnership and collaboration, making sure that we are doing things together to do what we can to make sure we're supporting all of our cities and what you guys need, as well as, you know, helping we do things together versus, you know, not always making it seem like we're fighting against each other. Tomorrow is the EDM and MapSide Day at the Capitol, so if there's any questions anybody wants me to ask, feel free to let me know. I will be seeing Hudson, Lucero, Anderson, and those are the 3 I know for sure, at the moment, as well as I guess we'll be talking to Darlene Hood in regards to, the chicken laws.
I heard we heard about that, yeah.
No, we must have got to Jeannie, cause it's, me, Jeannie, and Nadine that are going down, so.
So we didn't mention that.
Yay, yay chickens.
So
So,
we don't say that one here.
yeah, I'll keep my mouth quiet, cause, you know, I may know a few people that have them around here.
We're aware.
Totally aware.
And then, we do have tentatively at the moment, May 29th from 10 to 11 a.m., the follow-up, webinar for the work, or the Wright County Ready workshop, with Greater MSP. So we're gonna do a webinar this time, May 29th from 10 to 11 a.m. So we'll come back and ask some of those questions that we were not able to really discuss in the end and follow up, which I'll send out an email with some of that. So it'll be, you know, like, what kind of development do you guys really want in Montrose? What kind of infrastructure do you have, and what kind of infrastructure is still a really big need for, you know, areas? You know, one topic I know for Delano is they're trying to actually get a rail hub actually in Delano. So, you know, that's gonna be one thing. And of course, I know you guys are still working on the wastewater treatment plants and stuff like that. So trying to pinpoint where all those needs are going to be. Other than that, we're just staying busy and trying to do everything we can for all places. If you did not hear, as of December 4th, I am officially the executive director. Suppose that would make sense if we're hiring the assistants. Our annual meeting went very well. Thank you for attending, those that were able to. I'm sure you've all heard by now, the humans were presented with the Citizens of the Year Award. They were able to be in attendance. That was really good. And they were very, very surprised. Greg was like, wait, what? What did you just say to me when I got him on the phone? But it was very well deserved for everything that they have done in this community for, I can't even tell you as many years, because I've known them for as many years as they've been around too. So, anything that you guys ever need, do not hesitate to ask. If you don't hear from me in 24, 48 hours, don't hesitate to, hey Missy, did you see my email? I do not lie. I might not see it the first time, but the second time I'll probably get it. On my signature, there is now a cell phone number, so if you don't get me, don't hesitate to reach out on a cell phone too, because sometimes I'm not in the office anymore either with being the executive director. I never know where I'm at, so. But yeah. Unfortunately, we also did hear back from Minnesota DEED. We did not get the child care grant, which was very sad. We had a few projects, one that only needed a whopping $13,000 to expand her daycare. So that was very hard to swallow in the end. Another one that was $54,000. I'm just like, I have almost $300,000 sitting in a revolving loan fund that I can't touch because of the restrictions, as we know. That also being said, we are working with Minnesota Deed and the county to transfer the funds to the partnership to become the county's local LBO. So then once it is all loaned out again and the restrictions are wiped, we will be able to actually do more with those funds. So it will be able to be helped for, daycares or small businesses or potential matching for grants and things like that. And then it'll also be something that, cities want to put something into to help with a project, but they can't do certain things with their funds. We can also do some stuff with that. So that's a work in progress, and we'll keep all the cities and everything posted too, because I've had that since 1993, and only being able to help manufacturers in this wonderful economy where everybody needs help is very frustrating. But yeah, more to come on all of that too.
Anybody else? Next meeting will be Tuesday, April 15th, 2025, 4 p.m. Montrose City Hall. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. We are adjourned.